Before we get started, very important that we recognize our sponsors. Traver Connect. 2 words ring true for all of us in the automotive service space: the phones. When we hear these words, instantly we all sigh. Because as much change as our industry has seen, we still get an overwhelming amount of calls. No need to sigh, though. That's where a good BDC comes in handy, doesn't it? I know the team at Traver Connect personally, and these guys get it. And they can help you build your service BDC. Or you can use their team to catch the calls you miss from their well-trained team of agents. Even have them make outbound calls and set new appointments. Give Traver Connect a call today. As they say, revenue doesn't leave a message at the beep. Dynatron Software. Dynatron Software is the premier provider of automotive fixed operation data analytics, business intelligence, and pricing optimization. We are changing the way the automotive dealerships look at their service department profitability and revenue streams. We are laser focused on profit management for fixed operations and uncovering hidden opportunities for our clients. Reach out to Dynatron Software today. We're excited for our new sponsor, F&I Direct. F&I Direct is a company comprised of experts on F&I, reinsurance, digital showroom workflows, and much more. They help fix and improve your processes and guarantee results. If you're interested in finding out how you can increase your profit on every unit sold without giving up any of the money you're already making, visit GuaranteedDealerProfits.com. Again, that's GuaranteedDealerProfits.com. You can schedule a free strategy call and start being more profitable this month. So don't wait. Welcome back, everybody, the Fixed Ops Mastermind podcast. Our guest today is Jeff Morrill. Jeff is co-founder of Planet Subaru and Planet Jeep Chrysler Dodge, both here in Massachusetts. And he is also the author of a new book, Profit Wise: How to Make More Money in Business by Doing the Right Thing. Jeff, welcome.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So for those who, since your name is not on the building, many people may not be familiar with exactly who you are, and to give us a little synopsis of how you came to be and how you came to write a book such as this.
Okay, well let's talk about the car business connection first.
Yes.
When I graduated from college, I was I just couldn't find a job doing anything, and recent college grads, particularly in 1994 when I was trying to do it, weren't particularly hot commodities apparently. So I was willing to take any job, and I think like so many people, the car business had a lot of opportunity that wasn't immediately obvious to me until I was in it for a while. So anyway, I started working as a service advisor in a dealership, and my brother just completely coincidentally, and I won't bore you with the story of how we both ended up in the car business, but he was working for Ford Motor Company at the time. So we got to talking about the desire to do our own dealership, and particularly to do a dealership that was an alternative to that typical experience. And I remember this is 1998 when we opened Planet Subaru. The business has evolved quite a bit since then. I mean, it's still, could use some improvement, I think, but over 20 years ago, it was pretty backwards, and we wanted to do something that was forward looking. And so we had this model and we had an idea. And back then, a couple of guys with not very much money could afford a Subaru dealership. So that was our start. That's how we began. And then, so fast forward in terms of the book, I learned a lot of lessons the hard way over the 20 years. Over 20 years, I was at Planet Subaru, almost a quarter century in the car business now for me. And I wanted to share those because I thought that it would help make a better world. And so I'm donating all the royalties. I don't really care about selling books other than I have responsibility, like an honorable responsibility to the publisher that I want to see people buy the book. But really it's an opportunity for me to share the ideas, and particularly how to serve your community while you're earning your living. So I want to share the idea that you can aspire to do more than rolling iron or fixing iron, that you can, along the way, you can help people out too.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's another cool story in the automotive business where somebody who's not coming from any sort of wealthy background or anything like that can make a life for themselves, whether it's owning a dealership such as yourself or just working your way up through car dealerships. That's a lot has changed in those 20 years, but those opportunities that are within a dealership are still there for people, who can come into a dealership with little to no education and make a life for themselves.
It's really, use the word opportunity, and I think about the auto industry as the opportunity business because, you think about so many fields, medicine, law, and there's just so many professions where you need a particular education to do it, and the opportunities to join it without a lot of experience are not possible. But in the car business, you can come in with a work ethic and desire and enough intelligence. You don't have to. I'm an example. You don't need to be, super smart. You gotta have a little bit, and if you bring those talents, and you can really make a good living. Yeah,
absolutely. So. In your book, and I thank you. You sent me a PDF copy early of it, and I have not gotten through the whole book. There is a lot of information in there, but there is some really cool stuff that's in there that's a little different from other things, and like you're talking about that kind of social responsibility and things too, that you can go out and make an excellent living, and still be more responsible in how you do that and how everything is put together, so to speak. And so one of the things was that stuck out to me was that you had said in the book that your most important role as a leader was to define the reality for your coworkers and community, and that's I have a coaching program called Vision and Values, and that's one of the things that I preach in there is that you need to have a vision for everybody to buy into. So that really touched me, that the vision and that reality that you're talking about. Can you go into a little bit more of what you mean by you defining the reality for everybody?
I got that term from former Herman Miller CEO Max Dupree, and he was trying to capture that idea that you need to establish the parameters within your organization about what kind of people are going to populate the ranks of your company, what are the rules that you're going to follow, what are the rules that are okay to break, and really important questions about what the values of the institution are, particularly as they relate to what you want to accomplish. Is your company exists to basically pillage your way to the maximum profits, or in the case of our companies, are you trying to make sure that you earn a good living for the stockholders, but also taking care of other stakeholders, such as the people who are on the team showing up to do the hard work every day, and the community that's supporting your business with their purchases. And so that's the kind of vision that we have. But I like that notion of defining reality because it's so important that you get that right first. And unless you get that right, it's hard to work back from there. Mm-hmm. If you have a company where no one's ever thought about why we're doing it, well, or do we hire the experienced business manager who's got a felony, record for taking advantage of people because he's got really good numbers? Or are we the kind of company that wants to take someone maybe right out of school who has, a natural personable personality and see if we can impart those skills, so right. There's all those decisions that need to be made, and they're very difficult to make unless you've established that vision. And that's why I think I want to highlight it's the most important thing that a leader does. And I generally am very qualified in my statements. I'm a son of a college professor who like to use words like things tend to happen in a certain way. He qualifies every statement, does not make bold, definitive statements. And to say that the number one most important thing expected of a leader is to define reality is a pretty strong statement for me. I don't throw those definitive statements around, but I really believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would I'll use your dad's word. I would tend to agree with you on that, that because that's really what starts to establish everything for the team, right? You have that vision. They have the core values and things that start to become the basically the morals of the company, and that's what people start to follow. They start to understand what's acceptable and what's not. And so one of the big things in your book, and in how you've run your business is selecting the best people. And we talked a little bit about before we started recording how important that is. And so what is the process that you go through to get the right people? Because you can go out and hire 100 people tomorrow, but it's quite possible that 100 people that you hire are not going to make it because you didn't put any time into bringing them on. So what's the process that you guys follow to make sure that you get the best people coming into your stores?
Well, let me start by saying that when we opened, we didn't have any process at all. And the results reflected the amount of effort we had invested in the process, and they were terrible results. And so over a period of time, by making mistakes, and we've grown with a couple of dealerships, with kind of a natural, even a low level of turnover. There's some natural turnover. People retire or whatever, they move to other states. In a few cases, you have to fire people, of course. And anyway, we've probably had the opportunity to hire a few hundred people over the years. So we've gotten a lot of practice. And I think one of the most important things is to have any process at all. And they don't have to use ours. We have a pretty common sense, straightforward one that was acquired through making the mistakes and doing things the wrong way. And I describe that in the book. But a couple of tips from that, a couple of pieces of it, we can go into those. Then if you want to dig deeper, we can, but I'll give you a couple of quick ones. The first one is that before you run an ad, you should make sure you have a clear idea of what you want from a candidate. And what I mean by that is, in the case of an automotive salesperson, well, I mean, it's sort of obvious, I guess, that we need someone to sell cars. Well, I'm talking about a level of detail a little more than that. So do we want someone with or without experience? Do we want someone who has worked in a particular field? Like, one of the things we found is that people coming from the businesses like hospitality have been very good salespeople for us, because they're just accustomed to being nice to people all day. And it's an environment where they've already had an opportunity to demonstrate that they can get along well with people, and they have that kind of servant personality. So once we understand who we're looking for, we can do a much better ad. That's one part of the process. Another tip that I think is very important is, once you get to the interview stage, it's really important to have a script for that interview. If you don't have your questions worked out in advance that you ask of every person who applies for the job, what tends to happen, and this used to happen to us, like it just, as you'd expect it would, you just end up talking about pets and hobbies and where'd you grow up, and there's no information with signal value, no information that will tell you about who this person's going to be once they join you. Yeah. So, each position in our company has a different set of questions, but there's some overlap, on the character questions and that kind of thing. And on my website, we actually have some of the scripts we use. So you don't even have to buy the book. If you just want to visit jeffmorrill.com, you can take a look at what I'm talking about. And we ask those questions. Those are the actual questions we ask of the people interviewing with us.
Very cool. I certainly find that having a script, knowing what questions you're going to ask, if for no other reason, you get a baseline with each candidate, because without that, you ask each one different questions. You have no way to except for your gut feelings, you have no way to compare apples to apples of the people that you're dealing with, judging by the questions that they answered, if they all answered different questions.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it's, I guess that goes back to the importance of process through all of this, that relying on your gut, I think it's part of it. I mean, obviously you need to use your experience and the benefit of the judgment you've developed over the years working with candidates and understanding the nuances of the personal qualities that succeed in a particular position versus another position. But you need some kind of system for making it work rather than just relying on your gut.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right. After decades in the business, your gut is certainly going to play a role in making those decisions. But you still need to have some actual factual things that you're searching out to make to base those decisions. So when you guys are doing interviews, do you do multiple? Are you always doing multiple interviews with candidates, or is it one interview and kind of figure it out from there?
One of the things we found is that the 3-interview sequence is the best. And I'll tell you about how we do our interviews. The first one is with a manager or two to describe the position and make a decision with the candidate about whether it makes sense for the dealership and for that candidate to proceed to a second interview with a slightly larger portion of the team. And then after we complete the first interview, we ask the person to call us and if they're interested. A surprising number of people after the first interview never call, but we actually make that very intentionally a part of that. They need to call us. And we do that because we don't want to track down candidates that aren't interested. And
Sure.
It saves us a little time. But in any case, So moving on to that second interview, that's a different part of the team, similar interview with also with a different script, but it has a script. And then the third interview is what we call a shadow day. And the shadow day is less a formal interview and more an opportunity for people to spend time in the department watching our actual team go about the day and do their work. So in the case of a salesperson, we'll invite them to spend a busy Saturday just listening in on conversations. And that gives the candidate an opportunity to listen and decide, can I imagine myself performing this role here? And some people have this idea of what it's like to be a salesperson. And when they actually see it, they're like, I don't think I can do this. So the benefit of that shadow day is that it tends to scare off, if you will, a few people who might have otherwise kind of gone through the interview process pretty successfully, even to the point of us hiring them, but then they're doing it for a few weeks or a few months. We've invested all those training resources and they just quit. Mm-hmm. So that third interview is really good for that shadow day. I think the benefit of 3 interviews, I mean, you could do 2 or you could do 4, but 3 is kind of that nice match between the amount of resources we have available to interview candidates. I mean, there's only so much you can vet somebody before you have to make a decision. Right. It's a balance between that and also the opportunity to get enough eyes on the candidate, enough of your team members, and enough occasions for them to show who they are. I mean, if you can't show up 3 times in a row on time, for instance, that it's probably, I mean, we won't disqualify someone for being 2 minutes late to an interview. I mean, things happen. But if you're late to 2 interviews out of 3, I don't know if we need to know a whole lot more about you, even if you would otherwise wow us with your resume and your sterling personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I am certainly one who, again, I would not disqualify somebody either for being late to an interview. The reason for that lateness is always interesting. Whether it was they got lost or something like that. But yeah, if they're going to show up for 2 out of 3 and not make it on time, then I would say you're getting a pretty good indication of of what their work ethic is probably going to be like when you're expecting them to be there for that 8 a.m. Monday morning meeting, and they're wandering in late.
Yeah. And that's really the, I mean, if you think about what's the point of the interview process, it's trying to surface the person's qualities.
Yep.
It's trying to investigate and learn, because if you ask, a candidate if he or she thinks he or she is good for the job, I mean, 100% of applicants say they're going to be great. So you have to discount quite a bit what they're telling you.
Right.
And you have to learn as much as you can by what you're able to observe about their behavior and the way they respond to different people and interact with other people. And the more eyes you can get on that, the more occasions, you're gonna benefit from that.
Yeah, I like the 3 interview system that you're describing, because like as you said, you can put more eyes on them. People can have a little more time for inconsistencies in the personality to show up, and then that shadow day really gives you an idea of whether is this person even going to be able to walk the speed that you need them to perform the job. I've had plenty of times where I've interviewed a tech or an advisor and thought they'd be a great fit, and you get them in and like they have 1 speed and it's low gear, and it's like, you're trying to walk across the shop with them and they're 27 steps behind. and
yeah. And that's not suited to the nature of the responsibilities they have in a busy shop. You got to hustle.
Right.
I get it.
You got to move.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you always have to be running or walking fast, but there are times when you need to keep up and you need to be able to switch it into a higher gear. And that gives you a little more opportunity to actually see those personality traits from them. I like the way you have that shadow day added in there, not just a second interview. So continuing on hiring. So would you say that you're more focused on hiring for the culture as opposed to the knowledge that somebody has? Is it more trying to find somebody who can fit into the store and the way that the personality is of that store, as opposed to, this person's highly qualified, so they don't quite fit into the culture of the store, but we'll take them because they're really qualified?
Yeah, I think we start with the cultural fit, because if someone, and I think we all have experience with this, if someone just doesn't play well with others, then they're just doomed. Like, we know that person will not be able to stay with us. Either they're going to get tired of us asking them to be nicer to other people or to treat people with more respect, or they're going to get tired of hearing that, or we're just going to get tired of putting up with it. Right. Or they're going to put us in a situation, which has happened before, where someone treats someone, so inappropriately that they can't remain on your team, mm-hmm. and you have to ask them to leave the team that day. So you start there, but that's necessary but not sufficient, because we've had some lovely people that, and I think we did this early on, that perhaps we were focused on the cultural fit and neglecting the other, technical skills. And I don't mean necessarily technical, like turning wrenches technical, but mm-hmm. but you need someone in every position, whether it's an accounting position, a sales position, it's a service writer, whatever it is. They need their like actual organizational skills. They need to have interpersonal skills. They need communication skills, and their thing, you can teach processes, but if someone is just terribly disorganized, very hard to upgrade that quality in a person. That's hard for us to pass on. Mm-hmm. So we look for both, and those scripts that I referred to earlier actually have questions that are trying to detect both of those, sets of qualities.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's probably a little deeper than I would have expected those scripts to go. So that is cool to know. So let's assume you've hired the best candidate, the person who you think fits the culture, can do the job. Where do you go with that person from there when they come into the dealership? Do you guys have a training program that's all set up for people? Is it kind of automotive industry standard where you get a couple hours and then thrown to the wolves as I started my service advising career? But or do you have a structured instructional period?
Obviously, the larger your organization, the more resources you have available for good training up front. But I think it's all part of a successful functioning organization, that if you're going to bring people in the case of a salesperson, the classic example is, well, here's all the brochures, and they're on the floor the next day selling. And as a practical matter, when we first opened, I mean, that's what we were doing. We just didn't have the experience or the institutional procedures in place to take care of that. But once you're up and running, absolutely, for every position we have, it's a mentoring procedure usually. Yeah. So in the case of a salesperson, it's a couple weeks of total training. And it's especially important for our organization because we intentionally are looking for people who have not sold cars before. We're happy to have a technician that's worked on cars before, but in the case of sales, we don't want anybody importing bad habits.
Right.
So the large majority, I wouldn't say it's 100%, but it's really close to 100% of our salespeople come in with no automotive sales training, and quite a few of them, don't even know a whole lot about cars. So we have to make sure that they understand our unique way of selling cars, which is a low pressure, no pressure, consultative kind of process. And we also got to give them a lot of product knowledge, and that takes a couple of weeks. As we'd love to do it even longer, but there is some 2 weeks we found is kind of like the magic amount of time where someone's really itching at some point to like get out of school and start doing it. And a lot of the knowledge needs on the job, like a lab component, if you will. Like you have to be doing it. Like you can talk about sales and role play with a salesperson all day long, or you can talk with, about replacing a Takata airbag all day long with an apprentice technician. But at some point you got to get a wrench out, and start working on it. So 2 weeks seems to be about the right amount for us. And most dealerships, don't maybe a day would be a lot for a lot of dealerships.
Yeah, absolutely. When I started my service advising career, number one, the owner hired me, didn't even tell anybody I was coming in. And then the service manager said, all right, you're going to follow me around for a couple of weeks and learn what to do. And I followed him around for a day, and the next day, two of the three service advisors called in sick, and he just pointed to the computer and said, there you go, that's where you're working today. So I got a few hours of training, and then on the desk you go. So and you were clearly destined for fixed operations greatness, and were able to make hay with that situation. But to ask that of a person who doesn't learn as quickly or doesn't bring as many skills, I think you're setting yourself up for failure, and you might risk losing people who would ultimately be really good service advisors in that case. But you screw up this person because you don't get them started on the right foot. Yeah, that's. I mean, when ultimately, if you lose somebody because you didn't train them well, that's not a loss I'm ever okay taking. If I have to lose somebody, I want to know that I personally have done everything I could to ensure their success, and either they chose to go or for whatever reason couldn't make a go of it. But lack of training should never be a reason for losing somebody, and it only hurts you in the long run, right? If your team is not trained, then they're going to make mistakes that are going to cost customers, they're going to cost money, they're going to cause problems, all because you didn't want to put in a little bit of training at the front end of their careers. So yeah,
and I'm thinking as you're talking about this, I'm like, why does that happen? And I think like two things came to mind. There's either a lack of intention on the part of the organization to say this is important, like it's missing from their definition of reality that we're not going to bring people into the organization that we don't adequately prepare. Yeah. I think that's the one big reason that people don't even realize how important it is. Although as we're talking about it seems so blindingly obvious that it's hard to believe anybody misses it. Right. But in the second case, I think too, people just get so busy. We're a 7-day-a-week business, and there's so much going on, and And it's not that people don't realize it's important for training. It's just that they don't have an organized department that allows them to break away themselves, or to designate a person to break away, to actually invest in that new person.
Right.
And they're really missing it. If you don't have that, I mean, I think that kind of goes back to our conversation about hiring, is that, to increase the likelihood that you're going to retain good candidates, you just have to find a way to do it. And it's hard.
Yes.
I mean, it's really hard, because particularly during the COVID era, we've had situations where we had to send 5-6 people in an apartment out for testing in a day, and then wait the days for the response. And there is no extra bandwidth at all, So I know how it happens, but somehow you got to make it happen.
Yeah. And I think that bandwidth is one of the things that causes us not to train at times, is because it's a reactionary hire, right? You had 2 people leave when you didn't expect it, or a person to leave when you didn't expect it. So you hired quickly just to get somebody in there. And now there's no time to train. There's no time they just need to be, if they're an advisor, they need to be on the desk working. If they're a tech, there's your lift, what to do. We're not showing them our processes and how we expect the vehicle to be inspected, where to get parts, all that kind of stuff. And all that stuff ends up hurting us in the long run with efficiencies or inefficiencies that show up that are because we didn't train people well.
Yeah. And there's all those things too, like when we've lost key people over the years, and sometimes, people that really hurt, hard to replace people, whether it's an experienced technician or whatever. And we try to do an exit interview when they leave and get a sense for what we can learn from their departure. And usually it's not a single thing that causes someone to leave. It's like this constellation of frustrations that they have. And we have fewer of these departures than we used to. So, but I want to be honest too. I mean, we had people, I remember in the early years, it's like, was it because the manager was treating people maybe not as respectfully he should? Well, that was a small part of it. Was the line too long at the parts counter? That was part of it. Was the lack of affirmation from anybody, the attaboys or the attagirls, was that part? Yeah, that was part of it. And there's all these little things, it's like all these bricks in a wall that keep someone, that make the wall strong and keep them on your team. But if you pull enough bricks out, eventually the wall crumbles. And I think this brick that we're talking about, like that, getting someone started on the right foot you got to get it right. You just have to.
Yeah, there's a quote that I love. I believe it's one of those like unknown quotes, but it's that no single raindrop ever feels responsible for the flood. And
yeah, right.
That's kind of what we do. It is, yes, it was a couple minutes too long every day at the parts counter. It was too many appointments at 9:00 for the number of service advisors you have. It's not necessarily any one big thing that somebody can point to and say, this is why I'm leaving. It's usually just a accumulation of smaller frustrations that either did not get addressed or just weren't seen or not seen as that important, that end up in the end causing us the pain that we sometimes put ourselves in. So in switching gears a little bit, so the chapter 4, I'm looking at your summary at the beginning of the book. Chapter 4, improving your leadership skills and creating durable trust among your team. And that goes along with the healthy culture. Trust is a massive component of building a team. When you have trust, you can question each other without it turning into a big fight. You can have debates about things, and you can more creatively solve problems. What are you guys doing, or how do you encourage your teams to build that trust up?
Well, I define trust in the book as being predictable in a positive way. And what I mean by that is that, someone who breaks their promises, for instance, they tell you one thing and do another, that person is not trustworthy. If you have an organization, a department where sometimes you're treated nicely at the dispatch counter and sometimes you're not, then that lack of consistency diminishes trust.
Yeah.
So going back to defining reality, I mean, that's actually a key part of the way we define reality, is that we want to make sure that we're consistent in the quality of our systems and the quality of the interaction we have with people. And what I mean by that is that we want to make sure, like, it is absolutely unacceptable in our businesses for a manager to tear into somebody. I mean, and by tearing into someone, to tell them that they're an idiot or to yell at them, or, I mean, we understand people make mistakes, and sometimes they make mistakes repeatedly, and that can be really frustrating to a supervisor. But you don't help at all in terms of building trust if you're not gentle with people. And by being gentle, I don't mean that you have to accept subpar performance.
Right.
The work we do is too important. I mean, particularly on the fixed ops side, the work we do, we have customers' lives in our hands. If we don't tighten the lug nuts on a vehicle, we could kill somebody either in the vehicle or in another when that wheel leaves the vehicle. So I'm not saying accepting subpar performance, but to yell at someone because they didn't do something right is not appropriate. It does not build trust. So that's an example about treating everybody with dignity and feeling like that everybody's contributions are appreciated, and when they make a mistake, that there's some grace there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the consistency portion of that trust is huge. Knowing that you can go to somebody with an issue that you're not going to get your face ripped off, right? That it's going to be handled in the same way every single time. That having that consistency is such a big part of people understanding that it's okay to make a mistake and admit to it when you make a mistake, because they know, there's not that there isn't any accountability there, but that accountability is not necessarily going to come with liability, with this is your fault type of thing. Whereas it's going to come with accountability of, yes, you left the lugs loose on that vehicle. It didn't fall off on the road. It didn't kill somebody. You're going to be written up. This is, maybe it's a suspension, whatever it is, but there is the accountability there, but they know that they're still going to be treated like a human being, and with respect, and held to the standard that they already knew existed for the business. And that trust is so key, but sometimes so hard to build up. And unfortunately very easy to lose with a team. If as a leader you do the wrong thing, you can lose that trust much easier. You can build it.
Yeah. Sam Irvin said that any jackass can down a barn, but it takes a carpenter to build one. And I like that quote because it captures how difficult it is to build an organization of people that respect each other and it functions in a healthy way.
Yep.
And a single person can screw that up. And it's one of the reasons why we almost never, it's been many years since we've brought in a manager from the outside.
Yeah. Almost
all of our managers are joined us at entry-level positions, technicians, service counter, not even service writers, but like receptionists, lot people, and then we grow them up. So they're by the time they're in an opportunity to supervise other people and influence the key decisions that get made for the company, we've already had a chance to make sure that they can handle that level of responsibility, right. And they're steeped in our culture by then. Mm-hmm. So we don't have, we're not bringing in people with, these habits or tendencies that we don't even know anything about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome, and something that doesn't happen enough in our industry is growing your own, whether it's technicians, service advisors, managers, directors. We have an incredibly talented pool of people that if we work with them properly and give them the training that they need and the guidance that they need, that we can create our own leadership tree forever, and keep picking leaders off of that rather than pulling people in who maybe their culture is only misaligned with yours a tiny little bit, but over 10 years, that tiny little bit becomes a giant chasm where you guys have gone apart. And if you can bring them up from inside, then you already know what that person is, and that they are going to follow your culture, and then they are part of your culture.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, Jeff, this has been a great conversation. A lot of really good information in there, and some really helpful information for people who are looking for a way to hire better candidates, or not necessarily better candidates. That's a poor choice of words. Hiring the right candidates. Love the 3 interview process that you guys do, and I'm sure that's going to help a lot of people. Thank you for being with us.
It's my pleasure. I enjoyed talking with you today.
Absolutely. Where can people find you? Where's the best place?
So my website is jeffmorrill.com, and it's Morrill. And there they'll find, I love hearing from listeners and readers. So if anybody wants to email me, I respond to every email, and I'm happy to answer questions or be inspired by ideas that people have. Awesome. And they can also find those resources that I alluded to earlier in terms of the tools that we use every day in our businesses. Mm-hmm. Many of them are available right on the website. So those interview scripts are for instance, but we also have lots of worksheets and that kind of thing that we've developed that help us. And if people want to buy the book, I'd love that too. And they can there's a link there to do that.
Okay, right off the website. Awesome. We'll make sure we get that linked up into the show notes. And again, thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thanks, Dave.
There it is, folks. Another success story in the automotive business. Started out with nothing, bought a dealership with his brother, now has 2 successful dealerships, and has written a book, Profit-Wise, to try and give back to an industry that has been so good to him, as well as help others in their lives. So go out, get your copy of Profit-Wise by Jeff Morrill, help out that cause, and help us out here at the Fixed Ops Mastermind podcast, if you would. Subscribe to the podcast. That is the lifeblood of what we do here. We appreciate you listening every single week, and we want more people to be able to hear this message. Subscribe, download, and tell a friend or two, wouldn't you? Thanks very much. Until next time.